Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the LPI and to this Learning Live digital event presented by BestAtDigital. It's my pleasure to welcome so many L&D professionals internationally today. So just checking that my audio is working, that you can hear me. If you have just joined us, I can see some people just joining into the event now. If you just utilize the chat function, just pop your name, where you're calling from. Always great to see where our L&D professionals are calling in from today. My name is Scott Shepherd. I am the Learning and Development Manager here at the LPI, and will be your host up until the hour where I'll hand over to our expert panel. So today we are going to be joined by Dr. Charlotte Hills, Professor Ralph Hertwig, and Juliana Unigano. We're going to be looking at Boosts, a behavioural science masterclass that will be able to supercharge your L&D performance with the latest behavioural science technique. So we're going to be joined by our expert panel just in about 10 minutes time on the hour at 1 o'clock. So I can just see some people just joining in now. A very, very warm welcome to you. Can see Kent's calling in. Kent's calling in from Nigeria. So lovely to have you with us. And Ronnie is calling in from Ohio in the US. So lovely to also have you with us this afternoon. Hi, Matt. Matt's calling in from Leeds, and Suki is calling in from a sunny Wales. So I think, yeah, plenty of sunshine across the UK here, and spring has finally set upon us. All Learning Live digital events are free to attend, and you can find previous recordings on the website on some truly inspiring and innovative sessions from L&D professionals from around the world. As we know, L&D budgets are often quite tight, so that's why we've made all Learning Live digital events completely free to attend. So just pick a session from our calendar and register. It's as easy as that. So we're not limiting you to a time window. Learning Live digital sessions are scheduled all year round, meaning that you can dip in and out whenever you wish. So never miss a session, and all Learning Live online events are recorded, and previous recordings are available to LPI members only. So if you're not an LPI member, you can go over to the lpi.org/membership, where we've tripled the number of member benefits, adding a new member dashboard, including an events management service, built-in free access to the LPI's digital academy, LPI Learn. And we've got many, many discounts for hybrid working, apps, content creation, etc. as well. And what's more, we're donating 10% of all new membership fees to the Trussell Trust to help people struggling to put food on the table, and freezing membership fees until April 2023. So we're going to be joined by our expert panel on the hour. We're going to be joined by Professor Ralph Hertwig, Director of the Centre for Adaptive Rationality at Max Planck Institute for Human Development. Ralph is Director of the Centre and is a human development and is based in Berlin. Hertwig's research focuses on models of bounded rationality, such as simple heuristics, on the importance of learning and decisions from experience, on the measurement of risk preferences, and on the way to change people's behaviour for the better by boosting their competencies. His articles have been published in top-tier scientific journals such as Psychological Review, Behavioural and Brain Sciences, and Psychological Science. In 2017, Hertwig was awarded the Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz Prize, Germany's most prestigious research award. And as member of the German National Academy of Sciences, Hertwig has been involved in providing independent scientific advice to the German government on obesity and the COVID-19 pandemic. Ralph is a member of the expert panel advising the German government on the coronavirus pandemic, and in 2020 he contributed to an impactful scientific report for the European Commission regarding the influence of social media on people's political behaviour. We're all going to be also joined by Dr. Charlotte Hills, behavioural science consultant at BestAtDigital. You'll tend to find Charlotte lingering in places where science meets design. Dr. Hills, as she insists on being called, no, not really, has spent years in neuroscience lab trying to train people with face blindness to recognise their loved ones' faces for the first time. That was a very hard challenge, and now Charlotte uses what she's learned about how the human brain works in the experiences she designs for clients. Thankfully, the organisational challenges she deals with tend to be easier to solve. Branching out from brains, Charlotte now looks at behaviour and how to change it in systematic ways. She asks questions like, who are the cool kids in your organisation and can I meet them? Who scares your people the most and what do you want your people to do? Actually, the approach has earned her friends and enemies, maybe, and awards across the healthcare and telecoms industry. And we're also going to be joined by Juliana Ungaranu, Vice President, Global Lead of Diversity, Equality and Inclusion, learning from Goldman Sachs. Juliana manages the global portfolio of inclusion and allyship programs at Goldman Sachs. She joined the London talent team in 2015, and prior to moving to Goldman Sachs, Juliana has managed the L&D function for GSMA, a fast-growing tech organisation. Juliana moved to London in 2007 to study politics at the University College London, followed by an MSc in Human Resource Management at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Previous to her work in human resources, Juliana interned with a member of the European Parliament and the Speaker of the House in the Romanian Parliament. So we've got a great session for you today with an expert panel that's going to provide some truly great insights into boosts and the behavioural science in and around that. So you have just joined us, a very, very warm welcome to you on behalf of the LPI and this Learning Live digital event hosted by BestAtDigital. If you have just joined us, just pop your name, where you're calling from, into the chat area. Always great to see where you're calling from. You can join the LPI and our panel of experts within L&D on topics to upskill yourself and share these within your organisations. Myself and my colleague Michael Strawbridge host events once or twice a week, and they are always free to attend. So you can just go over to www.learninglive.com/digital, where you will find future events coming up. I can just see Suzanne has just joined us from Woking. Lovely to have you with us. And Andrew in the house calling from Cardiff. Lovely to have you with us. And Claire also calling in from Birmingham. So lovely to have our L&D professionals with us today. So we'll be starting at 1 o'clock. Session duration today, 45 minutes. And our panel will answer as many questions as they can during today's event. So if you do have any questions today, just pop those into the chat panel and our expert panel will get round to answering them throughout today's event. I can see Olga's just joined us. Lovely to have you, Olga. She's calling in from Shrewsbury. And Thomas, hi, Thomas. Thomas is calling in all the way from Norway. So lots of international professionals calling in today on this Learning Live digital event. So really, really great to have you all with us. Our aim here at the LPI and our L&D community are to give you the skills and latest knowledge from industry experts on current subjects that are key to personal development and organisational capabilities. Every quarter, the LPI release the top 5 challenges that we all face as L&D professionals, so that you can keep up with the latest trends and data at your fingertips. So you can also connect with the LPI on LinkedIn. And if you want those top 5 challenges, just head over to www.thelpi.org, where you'll be able to find the latest data and share that within your organisation. If you have just joined us, we will be starting very, very shortly. Our panel of experts are raring to go, and they will be introducing themselves very, very shortly. So if you have just joined us, a very, very warm welcome. I can see Sarah's just joined us from Perth in Western Australia. Lovely to have you, Sarah. I've just come back from Australia last week, managed to get around to Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide, and it was amazing. So yeah, lovely to have you with us. Phoenix calling in from Austin in Texas. Lovely to have you with us. And Anne's calling in from a windy Surrey in the UK. So just making it 1 o'clock now. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our expert panel. I'm sure you're going to take lots and lots away today. So welcome to Ralph, welcome to Charlotte, and welcome Juliana.
Thanks so much, Scott. I'm just going to share my screen.
Perfect, all clear.
Brilliant. Give me 1 sec, so I organise stuff. Lovely. Thank you so much, Scott. We're really so pleased to have everyone with us today.
Pleasure.
So without giving the game away too much, because I'm not going to talk about boosts and what they are, because we have the absolute master with us today. But in a nutshell, boosts are really easy to apply pieces of information or rules of thumb that help busy people do things in the real world. So I don't know if you remember, a big slogan during the pandemic, at least in the UK, was hands, face, space. And that was actually a boost. So it was a simple rule of thumb that's designed to help us protect each other and keep each other safe. So I'll kick off. I'm Charlotte Hills, my PhD at Warwick University. Now I'm a behavioural design consultant at BestAtDigital. I advise clients on evidence-based strategies that they can use in learning programs to change behaviour. We've got Juliana here with us too.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to get to unpack our learning design on this particular course and how we partner with Charlotte to introduce boosts to drive impact through our learning. As previously mentioned, I'm part of the talent organization at Goldman Sachs, where I lead the portfolio of learning on inclusion and allyship. So I'll hand over to Charlotte to continue for this part of the session.
Thanks so much, Juliana. I'm just delighted to have Juliana here because she's one of the most ambitious people I've ever met in the space of inclusion. And we're working, so obviously with people in business like Juliana and people in academia like Ralph, who is an academic hero of mine. So he's the world expert in boosts, as I've already said. So you're in the company of amazing people who are bridging that divide and coming together to do some incredible things in the world. So Ralph, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Good day to everybody. I'm flustered by all the compliments. Charlotte, I didn't know that I'm one of your heroes. Well, it's hard to live up to those expectations, but I'm really very much looking forward to this session.
Thanks so much for being here. So to kick off, we're with a bunch of smart L&D professionals. One thing that the LPI talk about is this concern that many people have that learning is seen as a bit of a drag, so as an interruption to work. Is that a concern that you face if you're in the audience? So Scott's put up a poll at the moment. I've got a nice mixture of results coming through.
Lots of fastest fingers first coming through here. So I'm going to leave the poll up for about another 10 seconds so that we can get some of that data here. So do you worry that learning may be seen as an interruption to work? So just a simple yes or no, and we'll close that poll down very, very shortly. 100% have answered. Brilliant. So yes, 77%. And no, 23%. So I'm just going to end that poll now and just share those results on screen with you.
So as we kind of expected, really, most people thought that, yes, it is a concern, but I guess the important question is, what can we do about it? So are there strategies, if you're in L&D, that you use to help it so that learning doesn't feel like an interruption? We're going to leave this on screen for a little bit to give you some time to think. I'm just going to open the chat function, see what people are saying. And don't worry if you can't think of anything, I'll give you some kind of suggestions in a second.
So we'll just wait for some answers just to come through. Arash, learning in the flow. John's put market it more. Jamie's put learning in the flow of work, just in time, resources, etc., and when people need them. James has put, we at BAD make learning experiences as compelling as possible to encourage people to actually want to do them. That's why I said no. Irene's put micro learning. Matt has put small side-by-side coaching sessions to really work on those behaviours. Selena has put, we try to build in projects to programs which provide immediate actionable outcomes to those learner roles. Rob said, let's make it relevant. Heather concentrated in learning sprints. Sean has put making it easy. Lots and lots of great comments coming through and short inputs over a period of time. Again, common theme, micro learning is coming through quite a lot in bite-sized learning. Pedrag made it more relevant to the job at hand, away from compliance strategies, Sarah's put. Anna has put, I think, validating what others have learned and how they are using it. So a lot of comments coming through. I'm sorry I can't read them all out, but I think you're going to sort of quite a trend there coming through, Charlotte.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you noticed, but all the suggestions seem to centre around one of these 4 items. So if you're a behavioural designer, you're going to know the framework EAST. So it's a way of making sure that people actually find it easy to take the training and to apply it in the real world. They want to do it. And a few people have mentioned marketing. So making that really appealing, really attractive, and make not only the learning attractive, but the behavior that you're marketing, something that people really want to do. Other people, like Aresh, are saying about resources. So resources are great for helping people do things at the time that they are doing it. So making your training timely. And in the small side-by-side coaching sessions that Matt was talking about, that's one of the ways you can make learning more social. So there's lots of different techniques that you can use to make learning more effective, and Boosts is one that focuses on making things easy. So ways to break down what it is that you want people to do, and then it helps them to apply it in the real world by making things really easy. So that's my little pitch for why Boosts are an amazing thing to get to know how to use. And I can tell you, when we were starting this journey on diversity and inclusion with Goldman Sachs, we went away and did some research into the techniques that other people had used over the years. So not Goldman Sachs, but out in the literature. And it absolutely scared me to death. So the UK Behavioural Insights team, they do some amazing summaries and blogs on things, so they're well worth a read if you're interested in evidence-based strategies. They've summarized it quite nicely, so you actually get quite a bad backfire effect, or can do, or the learning isn't effective if you stick to traditional training strategies. So if you focus on just trying to change people's attitudes and then leaving them to interpret what you've just shown them. So if you use simple role plays that activate stereotypes by showing people in horrible situations and how it makes people feel, but without equipping them with the tools to do things different, you've just left them on their own. And what the review found is that people interpret that they have to walk on eggshells, that white men are villains, that they're going to lose their jobs to minorities, and that some people are just too sensitive. So in this kind of explore phase, we were desperately looking for evidence-based, creative ways to make things easy for people to interpret the DEI training, or diversity and inclusion training, and translate that to the real world. And so as we were in this period of research, the answer to this problem came to me in the form of Ralph. So I went along to a University of Warwick talk, and there was Ralph talking about this strategy that you can use to make things easy and help people in the real world. So kind of without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you now, Ralph, to share your expertise.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Charlotte. Would you already go on to the next slide? So let me tell you a little bit about how people think about what we can do as policymakers to change people's behavior. And there are at least these 2 frameworks. One is very popular currently, that's the nudging framework. And we are working on an alternative framework that we call boosting. So let me say a word on nudging. Nudging basically starts with the assumption that people tend to be really bad decision makers. They have motivational problems, they suffer from cognitive biases and so on. And that's why, in a way, we are no longer investing into people. Rather, what we do is we build a choice architecture, an external environment around them, and this environment pushes them or pulls them or nudges them in the desired direction. Now, I would argue that there's a lot of empirical behavioral evidence that suggests that no, people can also learn. We can become better decision makers, and it doesn't require that much effort. We don't have to send people back to schools. We can boost them. What exactly are boosts? And could we go to the next slide, Charlotte? What boosts are is basically, it's a policy approach that really targets people's cognitive, but also their motivational competences, because often our problems are not so much cognitive, but they are motivational. And the goal is to help people make good, informed decisions by and for themselves. Boosts, as I said, doesn't mean that we need to send people back to schools. We don't have the time for that kind of teaching. They should be simple, there should be cost-efficient interventions that require some minimal cognitive ability and motivation. And we can do that, and I will show that with a few examples, by targeting our cognition, but also the environment, or both. And I will talk a little bit about self-nudging, where you see the combination of both. As I emphasized, boosts really try to leave the agency and the autonomy with the people. And that's a difference to nudging. And what it also means is boosts must not be intransparent. They need to be transparent because people need to engage with them. And boosts can really be applied across a wide range of domains. They can help us make better decisions in the health domain, in the wealth domain. They can boost our happiness and also our business decision making. And what I will do next is I give you a few examples. And again, the emphasis is they are very simple, they are cost efficient. Charlotte, can we go on to the next page? Thank you. So this is very simple. And you all know the problem of door rings, namely that you open your door as a car driver and you haven't really looked around, and the bicyclist runs right into the door, often leading to very, very bad accidents. Now, what's the Dutch reach? The Dutch reach is a very simple behavioral solution. You know that you are supposed to check your rear view and the side view, but then what you sometimes forget is to turn, you are not turning around so that you don't see that area where the bicyclist may be. And what the Dutch reach tells us is that when you open the door, don't open it with the hand closest to the door handle, but with the hand on the other side. If you do that, so the right hand in my case, is you automatically turn around. You don't even have to think about it. And in order to make it even more likely that you actually think about the Dutch reach, we use a little red ribbon, for instance, and tie it to the handle so that when you try to reach the handle, you immediately get prompted. You prompt yourself, oh, right, there was something I was supposed to do, namely to turn around. And it has been shown empirically that this Dutch reach, it's a very simple exercise, very little learning required. And we are also using here the environment to prompt us, can already help us to reduce this risk of door rings. Let's go on to the next page. Let me give you a different example. So that was in the domain of door rings. Now, here's an example from medical decision making. This is a real world advertisement for a particular medication. It's called Lipitor. And the slogan here says, Lipitor cuts the risk by nearly half. And then you read more details. In patients with type 2 diabetes and at least one other risk factor for heart disease, Lipitor reduced the risk of stroke by 48%. That sounds fantastic, right? If you belong to that risk group, you should definitely take the medication. Or should you possibly not? Oh, sorry. Well, no, that's perfect. Thank you, Charlotte. Now, what we need to know here is, and again, it's a 1-minute boost. What we need to know is that what you have been presented with is a relative risk, 48%. But 48% could mean everything and anything. It could mean a reduction, say you have 100 people who are at risk of this disease, and it means a reduction from 100 to 50. That's roughly 48%. That's perfect, that's wonderful. But it could also mean among these 100 people, a reduction from 10 to 5. 48% could also mean among 100 people, a reduction from 1 to 0.5. That's all consistent with 48%. And what it means is, and that's what you need to understand, is that you need the absolute risk. And the absolute risk needs to be expressed in absolute frequencies that you easily understand. So the real or not the real, the correct absolute risk expression here is that Lipitor reduces the chance of stroke from 28 in 1,000 to 15 in 1,000, which is a reduction by 13 in 1,000, or equivalent to 1.3%. So in terms of an absolute risk, you suddenly have a good sense of how big or small the positive effect is. Now, and I'm not telling you that you are supposed to take this medication or not. What I want you is to ask the right question and to understand the number. So what the boost is, and now we go to the next slide, Charlotte, thank you. What the boost is as simple as this. Whenever you encounter a healthcare professional who provides you with statistics, probabilities typically, don't accept that. Immediately ask the health professional to please translate that into absolute numbers, because only with the absolute numbers you have a chance to judge for yourself whether or not you want to take the medication. Okay, that was in medical decision making. Can we boost managers? Absolutely, we can. Here's an example. Just imagine you're a very busy manager, what typically many people are, and you need to quickly tell whether a customer is still active or has become inactive in a large customer database. That's a very relevant decision because you may decide whether you send out expensive advertisement material. And the question is, how do we do that? And here's one way of doing it. And as you see, this is a rather complicated way, but it's the way that you are being taught in business schools. It's called the Pareto negative binomial distribution model. It's a quite complex equation, and I won't walk you through that equation because it's not helpful for our purpose, because there's an alternative. And the alternative we see on the next slide. This is a very simple heuristic, which says, if a customer has not purchased within the last 9 months, then we classify that person as inactive, otherwise as active. Now, this is a very simple, we call that heuristic, that often is used by marketing practitioners, and they do it out of a gut feeling. But now we know that this is a damn good heuristic. And we see that on the next page, because these authors here, they looked at the predictive accuracy. So how good or bad is the heuristic and the very complex model in predicting which customer is active or not. And what you see across 3 different industries, that the hiatus heuristic is at least as good and sometimes actually even better than the complex model. And I could tell you much more about why that is. How is that even possible? But this is a result that cuts across all kinds of decisions that we make, that with very simple, robust heuristics, we can often make much better decisions than with very complex models. So even managers' decision-making can be boosted. Now, let me give you still another example. We call this example, and it's a variation of boosting. It's a variant within the boosting approach. We call it self-nudging. Self-nudging, again, is a way of building competences that also actively enlists your proximate environment. And the idea is that we tell people how they can enlist nudges for themselves in order to self-regulate. So what that means is that you as a self-nudger, you become a citizen choice architect, because you are the person who have control over your proximate environment. And let me give you a very simple, straightforward example. It's in the domain of food choices, which is on the next slide. Now here you see 2 different refrigerators. On the left side, you see a refrigerator where the content screams at you, eat the pizza and drink the soft drinks, basically do a lot of things that are not necessarily good for your nutritional health. But you are the choice architect. You can determine how that refrigerator is going to look like. And of course, what you can do, rather than put the carrots and the fruits in some container that is pretty opaque, you can put it up front, and you could put it up in a way that the refrigerator now also screams to you, but it will lead to much healthier decision-making. So, and that's a simple example of how we can rearrange our proximate environment so that it becomes actually much easier for us to make the right decisions, at least the decisions that we would like to make. And we can that also use in a different area, namely in a very important family institution, namely the family meal. And what we have done here is we have thought about what can we do as parents, as busy parents, to increase the likelihood that we ourselves, but also our kid, eat in a healthier way. And there are some simple things that you can do in order to turn a family meal into a healthier experience. Most importantly, turn all devices with the screen off. So there is no iPhone and there's no TV running in the background. Take a little bit more time, which, and I can tell you more about that in the discussion, take a bit more time, and it tends to be the case that people eat healthier. Parental modeling is quite important. So you cannot just breach vegetables and salad, but you also actually have to eat it. So again, the parents as choice architect have very simple things they can do. They can make tweaks to the family environment and as a result eat much healthier, and the kids eat much healthier. And with that, I'm already at the end. I hope I have convinced you that these simple boosts can be applied across all kinds of domains, don't require much preparation, learning, or schooling at all. They are cost efficient and they can really help us to make better decisions. If you are interested in more boosts and more on the substance of boosts, there's a website that you can visit, and here you see the QR code. And with that, thank you very much. And I'm delighted to be here.
So if you haven't managed to get the QR code next, don't worry, because when we get to the question section, that's going to stay on screen for quite a while, so you have a chance then. So just to say, the variant of boosts that inspired us and Goldman Sachs was this IKEA family dinner kind of variant of boosts. So it breaks down these kind of secrets of success to creating this beautiful family dinner that everyone's kind of familiar with, but sometimes it's like, oh, what do I need to do to get there? So it's intuitively appealing as a designer to make things really concrete. So be really clear about what you want people to do, and then really easy to apply. So you're essentially giving people the tools for behavior change. We're not leaving them to interpret theory. We're giving them real clear, concrete tips or advice. We're not just focusing on attitude change. We're not really selling the benefits of this beautiful IKEA family dinner, because a lot of people already kind of know what it looks like. And that we're setting little small wins. So it's clear behavioural expectations about what we want to see in the world and what your colleagues are going to want to see you doing too. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Juliana.
That's great. So I'm going to spend the next 8 to 10 minutes covering 3 main items. Firstly, I'll share a bit of quick context on where in our DEI learning strategy this course actually fits in. Secondly, the challenge we aim to tackle with this course. And finally, the product and what we managed to achieve, zooming particularly into the behavioral science methods that we deployed. So to start briefly with our broader DEI learning strategy, simply put, we have 2 pillars. One that traditionally focuses on investing in our diverse employees from recruitment and attraction through to promotion across the different stages up to the most senior levels. And then secondly, which is particularly relevant here, recognizing the importance of an inclusive environment and specifically making equitable talent decisions, we focus a big bucket of our work on equipping all of our employees from the most junior through to the most senior with the language, with the knowledge and the actions they need to actually act on to foster that environment and make those equitable talent decisions. So particularly here, I would note, we are intentional about having separate and dedicated content inserted at key transition points. So when you join the firm, what's relevant to you? What do we expect you to do? So there is a specific course that focuses on those simple day-to-day allyship actions. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there is content for our senior leaders on the difference they make. How do you lead those talent conversations in an equitable way? How do you actually drive an inclusive organization, an inclusive business? And this particular course, Leaders as Allies, speaks to the middle level, to our managers, and specifically our VPs, and aims to support them through that transition to taking on more responsibility and leading by example. So we had content on this before when we first started tackling this challenge, but the reality was that people were not engaging with it. It was older, it was not interactive, it was quite long. And then also, I think all of us have gone through this journey over the last 2 to 3 years. We have evolved in terms of our own knowledge and commitment around diversity and inclusion, especially post 2020. We have also internally as an organization defined what we mean by allyship. What actions do we want to see at each level of seniority? So we wanted to make sure that we focus specifically on that. So this is the challenge we had at hand, and we reached out to BAD to help us with this, and specifically worked with Charlotte on identifying that secret sauce. So for a fast-paced environment, we wanted a self-serve, interactive, quick solution that will actually empower and motivate our managers to do a few things. Firstly, even open and complete the course, right? That's first win. Secondly, provide them with the knowledge they needed on how to lead inclusively. And then finally, which is what all of our us learning professionals want to achieve, really increase that likelihood of applying the knowledge they have actually acquired. So this is where our design journey begins. And I would break that into 3 parts, as Charlotte mentioned. We spent time on needs analysis. We spent a lot of time on learning design decisions. And then finally, that production and pilot as well, to see whether we actually had a successful product in our hands. So to start a little bit on that needs analysis piece, we spent a few weeks understanding what knowledge the group had and lacked, but most importantly, what knowledge they needed to make the right choices. So we worked with BAD on focus groups, analyzed our manager feedback data, our employee survey data with our own people science team. And then we found out through those conversations that people just wanted simple plug and play actions and language that they can take out of their toolkit in those moments that matter. So pretty much people told us, I care, I want to do the right thing, but it's busy. So tell me what to do in a simple way and help me apply it in a busy environment. And with the overlay of research from BestAtDigital and Charlotte, we identify a few science-backed learning methods that we could implement, and we can walk through those now. So as we look at this slide, we wanted to create that easy to digest, interactive and short course that cover the topics of engaging inclusively, acting to disrupt bias or microaggressions when we notice them, and then finally empower others through dialogue. So we lead with that tagline of allyship, which is present across all of our content on allyship, not just this course: engage, act, empower. Again, something simple, a tagline that people can take on and think about how they could apply every day. So you can see here a few videos that we focused on, right? Interactive video scenarios that people could actually engage with, where people could make a choice and see the consequences, which is usually harder to do in a digital environment, but we focused on making sure that happened to encourage people and motivate people to do the right choice. The other piece was, going back to Charlotte asking who the cool people are in your organization that people listen to. We wanted to make sure that we had that GS expert advice. When people have an issue or a question around diversity, equity, and inclusion, our phones ring, they reach out to us. So we said, okay, let's put those people in front. And we recorded our chief diversity officer, people across the world, making sure that it's regionally relevant, speaking on these particular 3 topics of engaging, acting, and empowering. And then excited that we actually implemented boosts on specific key takeaways on behaviors or pieces of knowledge we wanted people to apply. And then finally, that ability to select commitments on each topic that can then flow into your personalized takeaway plan. So I wanted to double click primarily on boost commitments and action plan, specifically as we're looking at behavioral science backed learning methods. So For Boost specifically, this took a lot of refining to find the simplest and easily comprehensible way of getting people to do what they needed to do and giving them a choice to have more detail if they wanted to. You could get away with simply reading the simple Boost of share your story, grab 15 minutes, own your education. And you kind of know what to do, especially at the manager or VP level. But if you wanted more detail, because people are different, they learn in different ways, they had that option of clicking through and getting more information. So these are simply simple and relatively straightforward things that people can act on. And I would say they are simple, but we know they are effective and can really turn the dial on inclusion and belonging in interaction across difference. Now, the second piece we wanted to focus on was this functionality of selecting your own commitments. And this one ticked a few boxes. One, it reminded people of the actions to increase that learning stickiness. Secondly, it gave people a choice around what to take forward and prioritize in terms of their behavior change. And then finally, asked for their commitment. You have to click and commit. All of these flew through a personalized action plan. So as you get to the end of the course, you click on getting your personalized plan, the different commitments flow through, and you can download this to use as a tearaway action plan going forward. And particularly this new edition helped participants to apply the takeaways rather than forgetting about the course and have it as a completed transcript. Now, to conclude, I will give you some early results. We launched this course a month ago to our newly promoted vice presidents. So far, we've had about 350 people complete the course. And based on initial survey data, more than 90% said they are likely to act on their commitments. And more than 90% said they acquired effective ways to speak up against bias and also identify how to make a difference as a leader, leading inclusively. So with that, I'll stop here and I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
I just wanted to know more and more and more about that, Juliana. So thanks for sharing what you've had so far since deployment. One of the things that came up in the chat window that would be interesting maybe to explore a little bit more. Ralph, one of our attendees said it's really interesting, but can't see much difference between nudges and boosts. Is there a good way to distinguish between the two?
Yeah, I think there are two important differences, I would say. One difference is that nudges really thinks about the choice architecture. I mean, there are some interventions that go beyond choice architecture, but it thinks about changes in the environment. A and B, these changes are not necessarily something that people are aware of. So in other words, there is a moment of paternalism in these changes in the choice architecture. So for instance, if I turn you explicitly into an organ donor by changing the default in organ donation, I'm acting relatively paternalistic toward you. And that's a big difference for me, the crucial difference to boosting, where we really work with the person. We want the person to be engaged and motivated. It should still be very simple because we don't want to erect any barriers for engaging with the boost, but the boost itself needs to be something that the person is okay with and does engage in. So, and it's this issue of the extent of paternalism that is very important to me. Agency and autonomy needs, in my view, to reside with the person and not with the public policy architect.
I love the way that when we had an initial discussion, Ralph, you were discussing ways that you could take the training, diversity and inclusion training, even further by creating prompts that people take with them into the real world to remind them to do certain things or act in certain ways. So for me, that was a way of using the other types of
I
boosting
think
techniques.
exactly. And so one, and you remind me of that. I think one aspect here is what I find also very important is the idea of the citizen choice architect, which means that we are not the victims of our environment, but we can actively construct the environment, but we should do that on the basis of the behavioral evidence, which means that we can share, we as public choice architects, we can share the knowledge that we have accrued about human behavior with the citizens. And that's another big difference to nudging. The nudgers keep the knowledge about human behavior to themselves, at least most of the time. And what I would like to do in boosting is actually to share the simple knowledge. Why shouldn't we understand, for instance, that the way we arrange our refrigerator or that the way we arrange our offices has an enormous impact over our behavior on many different behavioral levels. And by letting people into the secrets of, for instance, the choice architecture or of learning, we can really empower people and we can make them active citizen choice architects.
Matt's got a really interesting question about application. So he says, one of our challenges here is getting people to apply new behaviours or stick to them. We all struggle with this. So using the Boost framework, could something like flashcards summarising the workshop or session help to remind the employee of the content they took part in, just checking I understood the theory correctly?
Yes, absolutely. So these are self-prompts, but there are many other things that you can do. So a very established, very well-researched boost are implementation intentions. Implementation intentions is basically the idea, often we have very lofty goals, but in reality, we cannot really implement them because there are all kinds of barriers. And the implementation intentions would tell you, think about these barriers ahead of time. So what stands in the way of showing the behavior that you would like to show that is consistent with the goal that you have? What are the typical barriers that stand in the way? And then think about, so if that barrier pops up, what will I do? What can I do? So to give you a simple example, we all have the goal to exercise more. But then in the evening when we plan to go to the gym or go for a run, a friend calls and says, oh, by the way, let's go out for a beer. And that is the typical barrier that pops up. And then you say, yeah, okay, I come and have the beer and don't exercise. But we can anticipate that this may be a frequent problem. And then we can think about what we do. Well, what we could do is to tell the friend, you know what, tonight I already have plans, but let's go out tomorrow evening. So this is a very simple, what we call implementation intention boost, thinking about barriers that stand in the way and think about what reasonable solutions are. And that is something that we can basically apply in all kinds of domains, including when it comes to diversity inclusion.
So John Power had a really interesting observation. So he said, love the examples. Where can I get more ideas for these? So Ralph was just talking about the barriers that people face. And yeah, you're right, John. So we use the COM-B framework to work out what the barriers would be to someone active inclusively. So obviously a lot of it's around capability, like showing people what they need to do. Opportunity stuff came up for us. So a big barrier is the fear that it will take a long time. You don't have the opportunity to have in-depth conversations with people. So to show that, you know, it can be a 5-minute coffee that you have with someone that can really change things. And then looking at what motivational barriers people might have too. And so all of those came together in the DEI training. Juliana, is there anything that you'd like to share about how you advertise the training, how you brought it to people's awareness?
Yes, so 2 things that I would highlight there. One, finding the opportunities where you have a captive audience already, so people are motivated to do it. And then secondly, creating that buzz and excitement. So specifically on the opportunity piece, with the majority of our trainings, we embed them as part of transition key points. So if you're a new hire and you go through your integration experience, you want to learn about what good looks like here. So we offer the courses there. This particular course, if you become a new manager, you've just taken on manager responsibility, or you have just been promoted to VP and you're being taught about those particular expectations, again, as part of that program, we included. So I would say that works for us. The second piece is around creating the buzz. So specifically as part of this course, we have an introduction video that looks at different lived experiences, stories of diverse professionals, and shows a situation where the manager checks in, something very simple to do, and you see what happened. And the other situation with exactly the same storyline, when the manager just rushes off and goes to the meeting and does not check in, and we can see the consequences. So that particular simple example that people can relate to, we actually recorded the video within our offices. It looks very real and relatable. Created the buzz at the start of the course, but what we realized as we were planning the launch, we showed that video as part of the live program for our VPs. So we already created the buzz around, this is what you can see online. By the way, you're being asked to complete this particular course. So again, I think it can work to think about those opportunities where people want to know what good looks like, because it matters to them performing well. And then the other piece around finding exciting ways of marketing it.
Thanks so much for that. We worked quite hard to make the opening video quite emotive, didn't we? Did that work? How did people feel when they?
Yes, definitely. We really tapped into that empathy, and we've had, even within our senior management forums as well, people were, oh, wow, yes, this matters, and I want to see more.
That's brilliant. We've got, every time we create a new video, I show it to my CEO, and if she sheds a tear, then I know we're onto a good thing. So she's a good test ground for us.
We've got about 5 minutes for any more questions, Charlotte. I think there's a few more come in there, so some great examples and questions come through.
Is there anything that calls to you, Ralph or Juliana? Or would you like me to pick out another question?
Sure, absolutely. I wasn't following sorry, I just...
Oh yeah, no worries. So we've got, Darrell says, I think sometimes the challenge is how people stay on course to create a behavior change. For example, if I'm working to create a behavior change or habit change, I'll continue to work in that direction. But once I become under pressure, under challenge, then the behavior reverts to type. So whatever that person's type is. So how do we help people stay on track for behavior change during those more traditionally challenging or difficult times?
Yeah, so I think unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. There's no one thing that we can do, but there are various things that we can do. And depending on what type Daryl has in mind, it may be that different solutions also work for different people. So one example was the implementation intention, which is really analyzing the situation, thinking about what is the problem, what causes the problem when I'm under pressure. That would be one approach. Another approach is to think about self-commitment devices. So basically enter contracts with yourself that forces you, or that motivates you, inspires you to stick to the behavior that you agreed with. And there are very different forms of self-commitment devices. And the third one, I think, which is very important, is, by the way, self-commitment could also mean that you agree to do things together with another person, and that the presence of the other person also helps you to stick to the plan, so that it's not an individualistic activity, but it's something that you share with other people. And often sharing with other people keeps you honest, but also motivates you to show the behavior that you would like to show together. So I think socializing the situation and not just think about individual solutions to that problem is also very helpful and fruitful strategy to think about the problem. But again, I don't think there is one solution. It depends on whether you are a more social person or not. It depends on what the context is in which you work. But clearly, there are different kinds of solutions that we can think about.
Thanks so much. I think we're at time, are we, Scott?
We are at time, yeah. Any closing thoughts from yourself, Ralph, or Juliana before we wrap the session up today?
One thing I was going to say is organisations like Warwick University are quite open to having people drop in on some of their sessions. I know Warwick Behavioural Insights team welcomes people. At BestAtDigital, we'll let you know what other events we've got coming up. There's lots of stuff we're sharing around how to use behavioural insights. To our last question that came up from Caliste, we've got an expert in measuring the effectiveness on design. So I think this is a good nudge to get her to run a session. So you can sign up to get some of our updates, or go and look at external organisations like Warwick, which are amazing. And yeah, we've got Ralph's website here too, so you can look there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any closing thoughts from yourself, Ralph?
Maybe just one thought that goes back to the question of what is the difference between nudge and boost. And one difference for me is, very personally, I'm an optimist, and I believe that people can change their behavior and can become better, and that people can also do that to some extent with others' help in a very self-directed way. So I have I don't want to stop being an optimist. I want to see the world become better, and I think that we need to engage people to help us all to make the world into a better place. And for me, that is a crucial difference to the nudging view, which starts out with a relatively pessimistic image on how on people's decision-making skills. I think we are able to do a whole lot. We just need to find the resources in us, and we can, and that can be done with a lot of nice behavioral tricks. With that, I stop here.
Thank you, Ralph. And any final thoughts from yourself, Juliana?
Yeah, I'll just build on what Ralph just shared around people wanting to do right things. It's just helping them understand what they can do. And I would say, especially in the DEI space, I think we've come along that journey of explaining to people the moral and business case of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that's behind us. Specifically for the more senior leadership. And then again, it's just equipping them, right, through boosts with those particular simple actions that they can implement. But then specifically for people coming on this pipeline at the more junior levels, they're ready to do the right thing. They want a fair, equitable, inclusive world. So it's not necessarily about selling the case anymore, but rather just giving them some simple actions that they can apply within the working world.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much for all your final thoughts there. So on behalf of the LPI, I would just like to say a huge thank you to Charlotte, Ralph, and Juliana for sharing best practice, for sharing your knowledge, your skill, and of course your expertise in this area. And I'm sure a lot of people have taken a lot away from today and being able to implement that in their L&D organizations. So a big thank you to our expert panel and to yourselves for attending today's Learning Live digital event. I really do hope you find it insightful and that you'll be able to take some of those key messages and key themes away today. So on behalf of myself, I've been your host, Scott Shepherd, up until the close of this session today. So I'd like to wish you all a very pleasant afternoon. There will be a short survey when you do click off. If you can just add your details, add your comments, so that we can gather any future data for future Learning Live digital events.
Thank you,
Our
everyone.
next live event will be on Thursday, the 30th of March at 12 o'clock in association with Archipel. Look at employee development the day after tomorrow. So you can find more information on that by heading over to learninglive.com/digital. So on behalf of myself, the LPI, our expert panel, Charlotte, Ralph and Juliana, and for BestAtDigital for hosting this amazing session, I would like to wish you all a very, very pleasant afternoon.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you to everybody. Bye-bye.